one thing that I think is sort of like a responsibility to channels in this community is putting things on the map that are in the underground and that may have slipped through the cracks, and putting projects on people's radar that they may have never heard otherwise, and sort of shining a light on the musical underground, regardless of what the genre is, to hopefully make something clear that you wouldn't have heard otherwise, and that you probably should. Obviously, this can be a hit or miss type of thing because you never necessarily know what someone likes. You don't know if they're a death metal fan or a black metal fan or a grindcore fan. But one thing that I do love to do from time to time is put things on the map from the underground, whether it be in my wrap-up series or through my reviews. And I have a special one for you guys. I'm going to be talking about the Los Angeles, California duo Mortem Superstar. I will say that all of the links to check out this project and the first EP that dropped back in 2021, which Rots, that is a mouthful, was their debut EP back in 2021, and the links to that as well as places that you can support this project are going to be down in the description box below if this piques your interest and is something that you want to check out yourself. But I want to talk a little bit about why this project captivated me. And y'all will know that I am a sucker for dynamics and diversity and things that you don't usually hear. I am a fan of artsy stuff and experimental, what you might call avant-garde sort of music that breaks through different boundaries, or at least mixes influences in such a way that you don't usually hear because most people stick in the confinements of the genre that they're playing in. But Mortem Superstar are very much not that type of project. They very much are in the wheelhouse of taking a lot of different influences, throwing them in the witch's cauldron, stirring them up, and making a eldritch abomination, an amalgamation of so many different sounds that makes it a very creative sound overall. In an EP that barely breaches the 30-minute mark, it really does end up feeling like an entire full-body experience. It is stained with the tinges of 70s and 80s gothic music and punk music and aesthetics. It has the down-tuned grooves of an old-school death metal band, but also the shrieked gargle and almost storytelling vocals of a black metal band from the 90s. This project certainly has a dreary atmosphere and murky progressions, but what it has most importantly is substance. And that's the next thing that I'm going to go into about this project. A lot of times when you get experimental projects, it doesn't pan out for a couple of different reasons, but the primary reason usually boils down to the execution itself. You can take a lot of ideas and put them into one specific location, but if those ideas aren't blended in a solid way, they're just not going to end up sounding very good. And even with some of the bands that do have good experimentation, you also get the trade-off where one sound is going to dominate the other, and that's not something that I think Mortem Superstar succumbed to whatsoever across this project. There are always surprises in the riff writing as they descend down into these spirals of dreary atmosphere and gothic, almost like doom metal instrumentals. Like it recalls Saint Vitus if they got mixed with like a black metal band that had these storytelling poetic vocals that are just so in the throat. Even when this record hits a crescendo of beauty, it's never a pretty beauty. It is always a demented and dark and hellish sort of beauty. They know how to not only balance out the extremity, but also allow space in a composition. I did enjoy that all of these tracks don't really just hit the pedal to the metal and go non-stop with the momentum. The last thing that you want to hear in a project like this is them just going full steam ahead and never really stopping. Because yeah, it can be heavy, it can be relentless, but if there is nothing there that is going to stick with you, nothing there that is going to land past that point, it's not going to be something that is worth returning to. And luckily, Mortem Superstar, like I said a minute ago, they don't succumb to that. And that is because of their wonderful interlude work. The musical interludes aren't just interludes as in like they are put between tracks. I am talking about interludes within these tracks themselves. You can call them an interlude, you can call them a bridge, you can call them whatever you want, but these tracks breathe. As someone that enjoys progressive rockisms and progressive metal-isms, when it comes to metal, I appreciate that a lot. Not only does it break up the monotony, but it also adds a musical depth and complexity that wouldn't have necessarily been there otherwise. The Anatomist is my favorite track on this record, and that's just because of how many winding turns and twists it has constantly, and it's a great indication if you want a taste tester of this record and just want to try out one track before you listen to the whole thing to see if you enjoy it. Ping-ponging between rigid heaviness and these saccharine lulls, the gothicisms usually come about in the lyricism as well as the vocals. The lower croons recall Peter cedar steel, and overall I just got a lot of Type O negative vibes from the instrumentals themselves. The chords ring out with a lot of reverb on them, mostly just echoes in these mixes, and considering the fact that these interlude bits will usually just be a couple lonesome, macabre, cold chords playing out, they just get balanced with one of two things: either these crooning lower Type O negative type of gothic doom metal or doom rock inspired vocals, or these demonic, throaty, tortured sounding shrieks that I wouldn't even call shrieks as much as I would call them whispers, like this husky figure that is just wandering through a lonesome mansion. Everyone has died and there's, you know, skeletons and spider webs on the walls and like lightning striking from the windows in the distance. Mortem Superstar do a fantastic job of not only paying proper homage and bearing the torch for so many vintage styles that brought them up, but also successfully lets it go toe-to-toe with these modern ideas and modern instrumental ideas that are being played in the current day, but very few projects that are in the underground, and especially debuts, can successfully toe the line and thread the very, very, very thin needle of bringing all of those ideas together. Now, obviously, are there moments that things could have been better? You could say that about any project ever, but considering that this is a debut and it's an EP and this is just a up-and-coming duo that is sort of getting their stride, it excites me to see what the future is going to hold for this project, and it's one that I definitely think should be on your radar, or at least something that you taste test. And if you don't end up enjoying it, no harm, no foul, because that's the great thing. It gets in and out before it really allows itself to become cumbersome. And while I will say that sometimes these tracks are paced in such a way where maybe they didn't need as much of the paced sections as they ended up employing, I do just appreciate the risks that they took to break up these tracks into little segments where you can really taste each individual little part of it. Because mostly what you're getting on this track listing are just OSDM grooves that recall the 80s, these frigid, non-stop, relentless blast beats, these really surprisingly dynamic vocals, and these Type O negative, like doomy lead vocals. I don't usually expect this sort of experimentation from an up-and-coming band like this. And the absurdity that they embody, and you know how they say, you know, defy the mundane, they defy the mundane. Even down to their outfits and the way that they describe themselves as schizophrenic hybrid metal. I just love that distinction. And then the final thing I actually want to go into is I am a big person when it comes to mixing and sound engineering, and that's one thing that I listen for a lot in music, whether it be raw or very well produced. It's a spectrum, and one's not necessarily any better than the other because they both have their merits, but I was very, very impressed with how the mix and the composition of these tracks came together. Everything has a lot of space and everything is perfectly audible. These tracks sometimes take a minimalistic approach where the instrumentals are scant, but they use the space that they have to not only provide a good amount of choking atmosphere and building tension, but also a lot of prettiness and atmosphere, even if it's in sort of like the graveyard veneer. What can I say? Even though this record is very heavy, there are a lot of beautiful moments of riffs that just kind of stuck out in my head every time I listened to it, and the seamless transitions of these things just pan out in a great way. I really wanted to put Mortem Superstar on your guys' radar, so definitely check them out. I'll put the links down in the description box below, like I said, for you to support this project and check it out for yourself and keep the underground alive. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off, saying